All right, welcome to lesson 3. Today we're going to be talking about measures of variation. Okay, now we've talked about measures of center. Hold on, I'm just going to adjust this. We've talked about measures of center, and we've talked about how measures of center describe the center part of the data. Well, variation means difference. Okay, so the measures of variation are going to measure the differences within the data. So measure of variation is used to describe the distribution or spread. Hold on, let's see if we can adjust this. That's a little bit better. There we go. Distribution or spread of the data. Okay, now to find measures of variation, we want to split our data up into quartiles. Quartiles are the values that divide the data into 4 equal parts. So we will end up having a first quartile, a median, a third quartile, and then really a fourth quartile, which will be the ending or the highest part of our data. So when we're finding the measures of variation, we're looking for the median, which we already know is the middle number in a set of data. We're looking for the first quartile, which we're going to simplify and call Q1. The third quartile, which we'll call Q3, the interquartile range, which we will call the IQR, okay, the range, and the mean absolute deviation, which we're going to call the MAD. Now, we're not going to talk about mean absolute deviation today. We're going to be talking about that on Wednesday in class. So the first quartile is the median of the data values that are less than the mean, or the median, I'm sorry. The third quartile is the median of the data values that are more than the median. The interquartile range, or the IQR, is the distance or the difference between the first quartile, remember we're going to call this Q1, and the third quartile, which we're going to call Q3. Okay? The range is the difference between the greatest and the least data values. Now, in order to find the measure of variation, we also want to be able to find outliers. Now, an outlier is any element of a set of data that is at least 1.5 interquartile ranges less than the lower quartile or more than the upper quartile. In order to calculate or find an outlier, sometimes you can look at a set of data and you can say, I know that this one is an outlier, but not always. So how do we prove that this one is an outlier? Well, we're going to find the IQR, or the interquartile range of our data. We're going to find this IQR by taking the Q1 and subtracting, the Q3 and subtracting the Q1. Once we find that, we're going to multiply that IQR by 1.5. Then we're going to add the result to Q3. And if there are any data values that are higher than this sum that I just found, those data values are an outlier. We will then subtract the sum that we got in part 2 from the Q1. And if there are any data values that are lower than this, then that data value is an outlier. So let's go ahead and give this a try. The first thing that I want to do is I want to put all of my data values into numerical order. If you wish, you can pause the video now and come back to it to check your order. All right, mine should now all be in order. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find the median of this set of data. So I'm going to find the middle number, which should be right here between these two 40s. So which means that my median is going to be 40. Now, what I want to do is I want to find the first quartile and the third quartile. The first quartile is the median of all the data values that are less than the median. Okay, so I'm going to look at my data. I'm going to cover up the upper half of the data. Okay, and I'm going to find the median of just this lower half. Well, the median of this lower half is 30, which means that 30 is my Q1. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing for the upper quartile. I'm going to cover up the lower data. I'm going to find the median of the upper data, and I'm going to label that Q3. Now my next step is to find the IQR. Now I find the IQR by taking the Q3 minus the Q1. So the IQR is going to be 50 minus Q1, which is 30. So the IQR is going to equal 20. Okay? Now to find any outliers, what I want to do is I want to take this 20 and I want to multiply 20 times 1.5. Remember, that's step number 2 up here. 20 times 1.5. Now 20 times 1.5 is going to give us a number of 30. Now I want to find out, are there any data values that are the Q3 plus 30? Are there any data values higher than that? Which means that I'm going to find my upper inner fence. Did I spell fence wrong? I did. Okay. In order to do that, I'm going to take my Q3, which is 50, and I'm going to add this 30 that I got in part 2. And I'm going to get 80, okay? Now, I'm going to find the lower inner fence, and I'm going to take the Q1, which is 30, and I'm going to subtract the number that we got in number 2, which is 30, so 30 minus 30, which is 0. Now I'm going to ask myself, do I have any data values that are greater than 80 or less than 0? Well, I do, because I have this data value of 100, which means that my outliers is 100. So I have one outlier in this set of data. All right, let's move on to the back page. All right, the back page is measuring how to find the best measure of variation. So we learned that there were 3 ways to find the best measure of center, and that's mean, median, or mode. Okay, so using the mean of the data, okay, we're going to use the mean of the data as the best measure of center if there is no outliers. Okay, if we use the mean as the best measure of center, then the best measure of variation is going to be the MAD. Okay, if we use the median as the best measure of center when the data has outliers. Whenever we use the median as the best measure of center, the best measure of variation is going to be the IQR. We use the mode as the best measure of center whenever the data has a number that appears many times. And when the mode is used as the best measure of center, the best measure of variation is the IQR. So these occur in pairs: median IQR, mode IQR, mean, and the MAD. Okay? Now, we're going to practice finding all of the measures of variation. The following are test scores recorded from Mr. Spencer's science class. Find all measures of variation, but we're not going to worry about the MAD right now. The first thing that I need to do is go ahead and put all of these data values in order from least to greatest. You can go ahead and pause this video now and put them in order and come back as soon as you've got this completed. I'm just double checking with my answer key, make sure that I didn't forget any. All right, perfect. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and find the median of these sets of data. So I'm gonna find my median, and I should find that the median is 86. Okay, so I'm gonna label my median as 86. Now I'm gonna find my quartile 1, which remember is the median of the lower half of data. And I should find that my median is right here between 79 and 80. This is my quartile 1, which means the average of 79 and 80 is 79.5. Now I'm going to find my Q3, which is the median of the upper half of the data, which should be right here in between the 92s, which means that my Q3 is 92. Now, to find my IQR, remember that IQR is Q3 minus Q1. So I'm going to take Q3, which is 92, minus 79.5, and I should be getting an IQR of 12.5. Okay. Now we got to find the range, which is the greatest number minus the smallest number, so 98 minus 70, which should be 28. Okay, now I found my measures of variation here, but I still need to find if there's any outliers. To find if there's any outliers, what I'm going to do is take the IQR, 12.5, and I'm going to multiply that by 1.5. That's going to give me 18.75. Now, I want to find my upper inner fence and my lower inner fence. To find my upper inner fence, I'm going to take this Q3, which is 92, and I'm going to add the 18.75. Okay, which should give me 110.75. Now let's ask yourself, are there any data values here that are larger than 110.75? Are there any data values that are larger than our upper inner fence? No, there aren't. So there aren't any outliers on the higher end of this data. Now we'll find the lower inner fence by taking Q1, which is 79.5, minus 18.75, and that should equal 60.75. Hold on, that does not look correct. Let me check that. Oh, it is right, 16.75. Now let's ask yourself, are there any data values that are lower than 60.75? No, there are not. So we can say that since there's no data that's higher, or lower than these data sets, there are no outliers. Now, since there are no outliers, we know that our best measure of center is going to be the mean, because remember, the mean is used when there are no outliers. So our best measure of center is the mean, and if the mean is used as our best measure of center, then our best measure of variation is the MAD. All right, I'm going to encourage you to try example number 2 on your own. I will post an answer key on Canvas so that you can check your answers as soon as you are done. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you Wednesday in class.